We've all met that one person at family gatherings, the one who seems to think they know everything. They talk endlessly, acting as if they're the smartest person in the room. Yet when you actually fact-check them, most of what they say turns out to be completely wrong. The funniest part? They say it all with so much confidence. Their nonstop talking makes it obvious that they're not as intelligent as they believe. As Plato put it, wise men speak because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something. Then there are the genuinely smart people, the ones who actually know a lot, but seem quiet, hesitant, and full of doubt. They hold back because they're unsure, because they're aware of just how much they don't know. They don't want to speak unless they're completely sure, which ironically makes them seem less confident than the people who are spouting nonsense. But why is that? Why do people with little knowledge think they're geniuses, while those who are truly intelligent tend to doubt themselves? This strange effect was studied by psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, and it's now known as the Dunning-Kruger Effect. A perfect example of this happened in 1995 when a man named MacArthur Wheeler tried to rob 2 banks in Pittsburgh. He believed that rubbing lemon juice on his face would make him invisible to security cameras. He even tested his theory by taking a Polaroid of himself after applying the juice, but due to a likely error in his photography, he didn't show up in the image. That was all the proof he needed. Convinced he was right, he didn't question it any further. As Harkat Moulds once said, "A little knowledge is a dangerous thing." This absurd incident was one of the reasons Dunning decided to study why some people are so sure of themselves, despite being completely wrong. Then in 1999, Dunning and Kruger conducted an experiment where participants were asked to complete tasks and then assess their own performance. The results were fascinating. People who performed the worst were the most overconfident, rating themselves far higher than their actual abilities. Meanwhile, the most skilled participants slightly underestimated themselves. The study covered areas like humor, grammar, and logic, and the pattern was the same. The less someone knew, the more confident they were, while those who were actually knowledgeable were more critical of themselves. And that's the Dunning-Kruger effect in action. Throughout history, many philosophers, writers, and polymaths have touched on this concept in different ways. Bertrand Russell, Charles Darwin, and Socrates all understood the importance of humility when it comes to recognizing the limits of one's knowledge. Socrates, the classical Greek philosopher, famously said, "I know that I am intelligent because I know that I know nothing." This humility is exactly what incompetent people lack, which is why they can often be considered foolish. They claim to have knowledge they don't actually possess. The Dunning-Kruger effect, often shortened to DK, is a much broader concept than simply calling someone stupid, because in reality, it applies to all of us. How? That will be discussed later in the video. But first, let's explore why this phenomenon happens. Why do some people with little knowledge think they are smarter than they are? And why do highly intelligent individuals often lack confidence in their abilities? The Dunning-Kruger effect occurs because incompetence prevents individuals from recognizing their own mistakes and from understanding the expertise of others. Dunning and Kruger describe this as a dual burden. Not only do these individuals perform poorly, but their lack of skill also makes them unable to recognize their shortcomings. One of the key reasons for this effect is the inability to recognize a lack of skill and mistakes. Without enough knowledge, people cannot accurately assess their own performance, leading them to believe they are more competent than they actually are. A major factor behind this is a lack of metacognition, the ability to evaluate one's own thinking and understanding. People judge themselves from a narrow perspective, which skews their self-assessment. In this distorted self-awareness, having just a little bit of knowledge can create a false sense of confidence. When someone learns only a small amount about a subject, they may assume they fully understand it. This is why people who claim to have done their research often arrive at incorrect conclusions. Without deeper understanding, they fail to recognize the gaps in their knowledge. Alexander Pope expressed a similar idea. A little learning is a dangerous thing. Cognitive biases, such as heuristics, mental shortcuts used for quick decision-making, also contribute to the Dunning-Kruger effect. Additionally, the human tendency to seek patterns in information can lead people to misjudge their own abilities. Other factors also play a role. In one experiment, women performed just as well as men in scientific reasoning tasks, yet they underestimated their abilities due to societal beliefs about gender and science. However, the primary reason for this underestimation was their lack of metacognition. Everyone has a blind spot when it comes to uncertainty. Most people feel uncomfortable with the unknown, so they create explanations, even if they are not based on truth, just to feel a sense of security. This tendency is deeply rooted in human psychology. Instead of confronting their own inner flaws, they cling to convenient beliefs. When faced with their lack of knowledge, people react in different ways. Some are open to learning, but many resist. Those who can be considered foolish in this context often respond with anger rather than curiosity. Their inflated ego makes them perceive any challenge to their beliefs as a personal attack, not just on themselves, but also on their identity and their social group. This defensive reaction is a common human trait. The Dunning-Kruger effect is always at play, shaping how we perceive our intelligence and competence. Sometimes, we underestimate ourselves, failing to recognize what we are truly capable of. Other times, we overestimate ourselves, acting as if we are the smartest person in the room. This cognitive bias affects everyone at some point, making us believe we know more than we actually do. But there are ways to overcome it. Benjamin Franklin once said, "The doorstep to the temple of wisdom is a knowledge of our own ignorance." One of the main reasons people fall into the Dunning-Kruger trap is that they hold on to their beliefs too rigidly, often based on limited knowledge. It's essential to remain open-minded rather than clinging to a small amount of information, as if it represents the entire truth. When people become emotionally attached to their ideas, they struggle to accept when they are wrong. Letting go of that emotional investment allows space for growth and learning. Some people resist change because their ego prevents them from admitting they are wrong. Trying to change such individuals is often pointless. Instead of engaging in endless debates with those unwilling to grow, it is better to focus on your own self-awareness and learning. Real growth happens internally, and change only occurs when a person is ready to confront their own limitations. Real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance. Carl Jung introduced the concept of the dark shadow, the unconscious part of ourselves that we prefer to ignore. Many people fall victim to the Dunning-Kruger effect because they refuse to acknowledge their weaknesses. However, facing our fears, biases, and inadequacies is a crucial step toward genuine self-improvement. Recognizing that being wrong is not a failure, but an opportunity for growth leads to greater wisdom. Curiosity is a powerful remedy for overconfidence. Instead of assuming you already know everything, adopt a mindset of continuous learning. Read widely, engage with diverse perspectives, and never stop questioning what you think you know. The more you expand your horizons, the more you will realize the vastness of knowledge, making it easier to recognize your own limitations. The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool. Humility is key to overcoming the Dunning-Kruger effect. Acknowledging that you don't know everything allows you to learn from others instead of dismissing them. The wisest people are often those who admit how much they still have to learn. Accepting that you are not always right can be difficult, but it is an essential step toward wisdom. Don't involve yourself in everything. Not every situation requires your opinion. Sometimes it is better to listen and observe rather than speak. Constantly trying to prove your intelligence or correctness can be a sign of insecurity rather than true understanding. By stepping back, observing, and choosing when to speak, you can learn more and avoid unnecessary conflicts. Now that this study provides valuable insights into cognitive biases in incompetence, but has some limitations, it overlooks the fact that many individuals are aware of their lack of skill, especially in elite fields like sports or music. This suggests that overestimation is influenced by more than just metacognitive failings. Factors such as motivational biases, self-serving definitions, selective recall, and neglect of others' abilities also play a role. While the study primarily focuses on the bottom quartile, it acknowledges that overestimation occurs across all skill levels. This suggests that the phenomenon has a broader psychological basis, beyond simple cognitive deficits. The extent of overestimation also depends on the domain. In knowledge-based areas like grammar or logic, ignorance can mask incompetence, whereas in skill-based fields like sports, individuals may recognize their limitations despite theoretical knowledge. Additionally, in highly specialized fields like medicine or obscure languages, a lack of exposure prevents overestimation altogether. These nuances indicate that the Dunning-Kruger effect is shaped by domain-specific factors and various psychological influences, making it far more complex than originally framed. Anyways, I would like to end this video with a quote from Bruce Lee, a principle that you can apply to all of my videos on philosophy or psychology. Absorb what is useful, discard what is not, add what is uniquely your own.